Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Renewables podcast. Thank you very much for coming back and listening to us. And we've got another great topic today. It's a bit of a end of the year review. But before we get into that, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel and you fancy supporting us, then we'd really enjoy you being part of the show and subscribing to us on YouTube, following us on Spotify, and you can even become kind of a paid member of the podcast, where you get some of the episodes much earlier than anybody else. So if you fancy doing that, it's very low cost, then it will really help us push the podcast forward. But before we get into today's topic, how are you doing, Mark?
I'm good, thanks, mate. It's Christmas time, as people might note from my jumper if you're watching.
I'm very jealous.
I'm in good spirits. We've got like a week and a day left to go, I think, so very well.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, very good. I've got a day left to go because I'm going away. Tomorrow, so not to rub that in or anything like that. It's not my intention. But I'm in a very high stress area at the minute, trying to get everything ready for the last week of work when I'm not actually in, and I'll be on the ski slopes and worrying about a battery going in, and hopefully everything goes okay. So. A few late nights recently, just trying to get everything packed and sorted for this last week, and also ready for the new year as well, so we can hopefully go into the new year very low stress and just float into the new year. That's my
Let me know
aim.
if you figure that out, mate, because I think we'll be there in the normal carnage come the start of January. It's with best intentions, it never works, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's just absolute carnage in the start of the year. We always start the year with a team meeting. So every month throughout the year we go for a Toby Carvery breakfast, and then we discuss how things are. We have 1 month of like one-on-one appraisals and just a chat really, and then the following month we do the same thing, but instead of a one-on-one chat, we tend to do like a training session on something. So we're starting the year on the first day back with kind of a bit of an appraisal thing and goal setting for the year. So that'll be nice. But then after that, it is straight into the carnage season. But it's interesting. How's your January looking? Because we've had it up and down over the course of the last 3 or 4 years. We've had really quiet Januaries, and then we've got really busy ones. So what's your January looking like?
We've found a really busy period again, and I don't know quite why. Like you say, it does seem to like rise and fall. But yeah, January is absolutely rammed. Our first project's down in London. I was just talking to you about it. Organising the scaffold is proving to be a bit of an interesting one. But yeah, really, really busy. Lots of battery storage only jobs as well.
Okay.
Don't know about you.
Yeah. Is that battery storage only because they have solar, or just battery storage only because they don't want solar or can't have it?
Bit of a mixture of all of them. Most it's people opting for the batteries first with the intention to add solar later. Okay. I don't know if you've seen historically that used to be the other way around. In our experience coming into industry, we've had more people taking the batteries first, living with that for a little bit, and then adding the solar later on. There's a couple of them where they're in the middle of like renovations, so the roof works weirdly have been done last. You'd think they'd get done first. So that's been delayed. We're doing their batteries first. But yeah, there's other people with existing feed-in tariff solar systems as well, and they're trying to maximise their returns from that, I guess. So yeah, I'd probably say like 30% blend across all three of those scopes.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I think we've seen a little bit of that, or at least those conversations starting. I don't think there's many of our customers that have elected to do that, but where now these battery systems, they're kind of like all-in-one systems, aren't they? Like the SIG Energy, the Tesla, they've all got kind of decent amounts of solar input that you can have. I think the actual getting the battery in is what people really want now, because they can charge up on the cheap tariff if they've got an EV, a charger and everything like that. That actually the solar is almost like a bit of a nice to have if the roof is in good condition, or if they've got roofing works going to be undertaken, then it's good to get the battery in, pre-wire for the solar, or at least leave the space for the isolators and stuff. But yeah, no, that's interesting. For us, we're pretty busy in January. We're still trying to master the 2 jobs per week thing, and we're losing Patrick, or Paddy as we call him, for 3 months. So he goes to America for 3 months.
Must have a
on
good
Boxing Day.
employer. 3 months holiday, mate.
Yeah, that's it. I know. I know. So he goes 3 months doing some motocross stuff, I think. So that'll be interesting for him. But for us, we've kind of lost another pair of hands. So we'll be calling on our faithful subcontractors to give us a hand. But yeah, it's a busy January, and looks like it's stacking up into February as well. And then we'll see what happens over this next week or so. We've got a couple that hopefully by the time this podcast has come out, I'll either be listening to this thinking, yep, we got them, or for some reason we didn't. So we maybe got 3 or 4 that we can get over the line before the end of the week, which will fill February as well. So
yeah, good. I think with us, we kind of pivoted back because we were on a journey to try and do a couple of projects a week and probably build to a size of team that you've got. And we took a different approach in the end to just stick with that one project a week for a bit longer. I don't know if that's because I chickened out with the training centre opening up and stuff, and it's trying to divide yourself across too many things all at once while still running those businesses. But we found a little happy spot in there. It does make life easier when you're trying to generate the leads that you need to sustain the business, as we've discussed in the happy electrician meetings we've had, which we'll maybe talk about later on in this podcast. But I was just thinking one of the customers is a unique case that we're maybe going to see more of, and he lives in quite a remote part of Northumberland. So it's a little village. I think it's like 20 properties in there. And they have regular power cuts. And there was one, I think the year before last, that lasted for 5 days. And he has like a borehole with the water that gets pumped out of it as well. So he'd lost all of his water, his electricity. And at the time he had an oil heating system. So at least through a backup generator set, he was able to keep his heating on through the course of that period. But he swapped to an air source heat pump in the intervening periods, and he's really concerned now about his exposure to power cuts. If that was to happen again, like they get frequent ones for half a day to a day, but those longer ones become quite a challenge. So he's opted for the SIG Energy stuff with a 25 kilowatt bi-directional charger, compatible vehicle, full stack of batteries.
Wow.
And then a generator into the smart port. So all of that stuff can just look after itself to a large degree. And none of that was really about return on investment, adopting solar before battery. It was all about that resilience and being able to live in his house. Obviously, most people living in towns and urban areas, that's not so much of a factor, but there is a large population out there who are in those kind of situations, and saw something on the news the other week about people who've been off-grid. They can't get a grid connection. So you wonder if all this technology is going to start to help them out, because the people they were saying they're spending like 15 grand a year running off-grid systems. It's like, that's a crazy amount of money to be pumping out, knowing what we know. There must be a better work around some of those circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just done a survey probably a week or so ago, week or two ago now, up right on the border between England and Scotland. And it's a guy that he's building, he owns the land where this really derelict little bungalow is. And he's had about 3 or 4 years of just fighting planning to let him do anything with it. And for some reason, they didn't want him to build a little bungalow. And then a year or two later, he put planning in for this big 5-bed, modern-looking, bougie property, and they've approved it. And he kind of couldn't believe it. He put the application in just to try and spite them, really, and then they've actually approved it. And he's like, "Oh no, I've got to build it." But he'll be completely off grid. So I went up there the other week, like I say, and had a look at the area, and we're looking at probably about 60 panels, which I think we can get him up to about 30 kilowatts solar, but then a couple of wind turbines as well up there, and trying to integrate all of that into like an off-grid SIG Energy system. And I think it's quite remarkable what you can do with some of this kit. And obviously both of us are fanboys of the SIG Energy kit. I know you've been a fanboy of theirs right from the very start and helped them come into the UK. So it's amazing what one piece of technology can really do for people that are on grid, people that are off grid, people that have backup generators, people that have wind turbines. And suddenly, all these other manufacturers are having to kind of catch up to that. And a lot of manufacturers that I've supported for a lot of years are, a generation or two behind them a little bit. But the whole off-grid side of things is a different kettle of fish, really, when you're looking at the design, because you've got to have in your mind the fact that the grid is not there, which might sound like a really obvious statement, but I know that this customer had a quote from one of the big national companies, and they were proposing putting him in a Tesla Powerwall gateway with one Tesla Powerwall 3. And he said, yes, I'm going to have a heat pump. I'm going to have, he works on vehicles and things like that. So he's got like electric ramps, and his house was, like I say, going to be this big 5-bed thing, middle of nowhere, all this solar and wind to sort out. And I'm like, how is a Tesla Powerwall ever going to do this? Because it's a single phase device as well. And so we're looking at putting him a 3-phase backups off-grid system in. And it is a completely different mindset in terms of when you are looking at an off-grid system, to try and get that into your mind as to, look, there just simply is not a way to, balance this system. That system has to be able to do it, and that is bringing on a backup generator or something like that. So it's a really interesting project. It's one of them projects where I walked away thinking, I hope I get this. I really hope I get this. But we've had a couple of, I think today and yesterday, we've had 2 customers inquire where they've got Powerwall 2s, and they're now wanting to add battery storage to it and also add more solar PV. And I think that's a really tricky one, because the customer's got the gateway and also they've got the Powerwall 2, but the Powerwall 3 isn't compatible with the Powerwall 2. So you're kind of like, well, unfortunately, mate, you're going to have to rip your Powerwall 2 out and then put a Powerwall 3 in, or like on this 3-phase customer that Reese was speaking to, who works for Oval. Reese speaking to him and saying, look, you've got a 3-phase system, but your Powerwall is only be able to back up 1 phase. You've only got 1 Powerwall anyway. Why don't we take that out and then put you as 3-phase SIG energy system in? And so I think that's kind of the route he's going to go down. But yeah, the SIG energy kit is just killing it at the minute, innit? Can't move away from it. Can't do anything else. I'm sick of seeing them out there.
Now, we've definitely got lucky with that on our entry to industry to stumble across that, really. It was only Lewis reaching out on LinkedIn alongside lots of other companies who are always pushing their products, to be fair. And by luck, more than good judgment, we got in there from the start, and that helped us massively with our journey into renewables, certainly in building inquiries. But we see the same, like customers with different, I won't list the names, but different inverter types who are just wanting to swap to it because they've seen its capabilities. And we've discussed this before, but that brings the questions around like the environmental aspects of that. And the second-hand market for this stuff isn't generally really there. So it's a difficult one, because people do want the latest and greatest stuff. It's the modern world we live in, and the challenges around that really are for us as installers and installation companies to deal with. We're serving a purpose in providing this stuff, not the ethics and like integrity behind the environmental side of it. But yeah, same sort of thing with us, a customer up. I think he's up in northwest Scotland. Lives on a bungalow on a hillside, and he wants to put like 60 odd panels on this hillside with the intent of ditching his grid connection.
Right.
He's not happy with the service he's been provided in terms of his electrical supply and all the standing charges around it. And people do get in those mindsets, don't they? I think it can be a factor in the decisions they make, that they just want to get out of that game altogether. So he's looking at a not insubstantial system, probably a similar sort of thing to what you're looking towards. It's the SIG energy stuff is just the default we put forward in that circumstance, because it's not the most expensive kit when you're comparing it to other premium offerings. It works flawlessly in my experience, and it's not an advert for SIG energy, by the way. And it solves a consumer's problem. That's the best kit when it solves a problem. Apple did that really well with the iPhones and things. And SIG energy haven't invented anything new. They've sort of reinvented the wheel to a large degree, haven't they, with that kit? And now everyone else is looking at them with envy, and we're all sick of seeing the same white boxes on everyone's walls. But that's up to the market to react to that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and that's what's good about a competitive market, isn't it? I know I won't bring you into this because it's not fair for me to speak for you, but I know I definitely complain about, sometimes the competition out there and in terms of the installer side, because it isn't apples for apples, when customers are comparing, installations and offerings and everything like that. And I'm obviously going to be biased towards my side, but, and that does mean that as installers, we need to lift our game and find different ways to do things and just get that little couple of percent edge on some of your competition and things like that. But then in the manufacturing game, that's probably even harder because you've got a whole manufacturing process to potentially change, a whole approvals process to change, and you're probably talking a hell of a lot of money. For me, changing our uniform or redoing our vans or putting something else on our website isn't going to cost me that much. But if you ask some of these older brands that are in the market to suddenly have everything that the SIG Energy system has, then that's a hell of a lot of an investment and hell of a lot of planning, hell of a lot of R&D, and then suddenly there's something else when they're ready to release something like that. Then there's something else out there. So it's I don't envy them trying to compete in that world, but selfishly for us as installers and for customers, it's good when this sort of thing happens because it just forces everybody to try and rise to that level, and it's stuff that us as installers and customers have been asking for ages. True three-phase backup, a really flexible setup where you can almost stack them unlimited, within, and just build a massive system or a really small system, intercompatible battery packs, so you can have all the different size of battery packs, a really great inverter range. We should really tap SIG Energy up for a sponsorship, shouldn't we, on this? But, having that really, really just helps to make the design of these systems so much easier for us, and also, like you mentioned, solves problems for customers that want a really large inverter because they want to do whole home backup, having a really big gateway that can handle that full home's current demand and all of that. I think all these things are just massive ticks in the box, and there's no question as to why it's such a popular product now, because it just answers so many questions that installers and consumers have been asking for years. Some of this stuff I remember people asking me when I first went self-employed, and I was like, you're dreaming if you're thinking you're going to get a whole home backup on something like this, unless you go for like a Victron system or something like that. And here we are. It's a commercially available product that's, that most people are fitting now.
Yeah, I mean, the change is rapid, isn't it? And it's exciting to think ahead what might be coming next year. And I think that's one of the things, looking back, as we were supposed to be doing in this podcast from our experience years, to install a show and some of the stuff we saw there, not just around the event, but people coming across our little stand we had to discuss their products with us and pitch the idea of coming to talk to us on the podcast, because we're always open for that. And there is some cool innovation that's going on out there. And like you say, it's a saturated market space in terms of kit and in installation companies as well. And I think we've referenced that on the Happy Electrician discussion that will be out before this one. So you raised two great points there. So I just wondered what you made of the first trade. I mean, you've done stuff with Doncaster Cables before, but I've never really been on a stand at a trade show outside of the safe isolation one, and it was a different experience.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it because it was, I think, obviously we're here talking to each other about all this sort of stuff, and I think it's really nice when I'm sure we would be talking to each other like this if it wasn't sat across from each other. It would be digitally on Instagram or something like that, or sat across from each other and there'd be 5 people listening. It doesn't really, I genuinely don't really mind how many people are listening. I really enjoy doing this. And I think what going to that trade show really showed me is that people are listening and they really want to have the conversation about it. And obviously when you came up with the idea of doing this sort of podcast, it was kind of like, actually, it's strange that there's not anything out there that is specifically niched down to renewables. There's obviously other great podcasts out there about the electrical industry, and whilst we do track back into the electrical side because it's our like home a little bit as two electricians, we do try and see a wider image of it in terms of the heating side and all the integration that a system can have. But I think doing that trade show really opened our eyes that there was a hunger from people that hadn't listened to the podcast and were finding us for the first time, and were then going away and probably listening to a couple of episodes and seeing if they liked it. But also people that had been listening to the podcast and some big wigs in industry as well that were interested in what two rough-ass electricians wanted what we're talking about. So, I really enjoyed having those conversations with people, and it made me feel good that people were actually listening to it. It was a nice feeling.
It is a right eclectic mix in the audience, and you're right, there's people who are in charge of some of these industry organisations out there you'd think wouldn't want to hear from us. But they're listening along and feeding back actually some of their views around the topics we have discussed. And then people out in industry as installers like us and consumers as well. Like there's 3 or 4 of my customers who I know listen to this podcast, so I have to be on best behaviour sometimes and not reveal all of our cock-ups. But it's a real broad mix, and the data that comes with the show through Spotify, I was messaging you earlier this week actually about our Spotify Wrapped, is really encouraging. Like we're seeing lots of new audience from all parts of the world, and the numbers aren't up there with these huge global podcasts by any stretch, but in our niche down area, they're encouraging, and there's comments coming in. We get lots of likes, loads of new followers. So hopefully we're doing a good job in the way we present the actual podcast. But I found that experience of meeting people in the real world to be a different level to that. You can have better conversations face to face and feedback around the topics and discussions and ideas as well, like the stuff we were just speaking about, things we can do and other avenues we can go down that we're still on with in the background behind the day job on that 8th day a week we all need. But it's, that was a really interesting experience for me, the Installer Show. It's one of the things I enjoyed, and we've got the opportunity again next year to do that. And we are referencing a bit into the future in this podcast too, where we've got also the ECN show that they're just starting, which is the same time as Solar and Storage at the NEC, where we've got space there as well. And we're going to try and fulfill that somehow because we're both busy with other things at that event. So I think we're going to be tapping into our network to help us with that one. But I think it's important we try and do those in-person events, give out some merch, grow the show. There's a benefit for us there, and just chat with people in the real world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what was interesting when people came across us, they at Installer Show, and this will probably happen more the more shows that we do and what have you, is that there's some crazy jobs out there that people that are linked to renewables, but you just don't ever think about. There's a lot of these. I remember speaking to a guy about that he was in charge of like the regulations for hydrogen in the UK, and I'm like, wow, I didn't. Of course, there must be something like that, but I never even really thought about it. So there's all these really cool people that admittedly we haven't had anyone on the show like that as yet, but that's mainly due to us trying to squeeze this in around our day job of running a company each. So I'd love to get more and more people moving into 2026 that are in those kind of wider, more fringe technologies that are still a massive deal, but maybe don't get talked about in the same level that battery storage, solar, wind, and everything gets spoken about. So I'd love to get more and more of those people into the show. I think as well what I noticed at places like Installer Show and when I was at Solar and Storage is that there is this massive AI
took the words out my mouth there.
App boom, isn't there?
There is.
It's and I think that looking forward into 2026, that might be where these things really start to take off. I think that's going to be where we're going to be.
Yeah, you're definitely right. And there was a guy I meet at all these shows, I can never remember his name, and he says about coming on, and it's in my inbox of things to organise because he specialises in like an AI app that looks after inverters and heat pumps and stuff. I don't thoroughly understand what it is he's up to. It's way beyond my pay grade. But that is where it's all going, isn't it? And I think the next journey of our little show we've created is probably, like you say, more towards some of those fringe areas of the renewables industry and getting some of those conversations done. I think we've done a good job establishing the podcast and committing to the time we put into doing it. We're quite consistent with all that now, and we've got a growing audience. So it's where we next take it. I think that'd be a really interesting thing to explore around like hydrogen and heat pumps and other biofuels and stuff that are becoming more prevalent. So there's all kinds of conversation areas we can end up in. And like you say, going to these shows is an eye-opener to that because we're blinkered to a lot of it in our own little sector around solar and electrical work. So you're not aware of it, are you? That's the benefit of those events, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty sure that when we get someone on about hydrogen, I'll probably be like, I'd really love to do a bit of hydrogen. but yeah, I don't know if I'll let myself loose on that straight away. But yeah, I think there's so much that goes on outside of the little niches that we see on Instagram, on YouTube and on Facebook and all these other places that have a massive part of the energy mix that we that we're probably going to be moving into as a country over the next 10 years, nuclear and all these, small nuclear reactors. It'd be great to have someone on that is part of that, and actually talking to us about how that could actually be achieved and what the dangers are and all this sort of stuff. So I think that's what I'm really going to try and focus on into 2026, is maybe try and bring some more of those. We still want to chat to people about solar panels and batteries and everything, but I think, and air source heat pumps, but I think some of those real fringe technologies that people hear about all the time, but maybe there isn't that long form content talking about them, I think is probably going to be a bit of a focus of mine to try and get some people that are involved with that. That'll be awesome.
It will, and I think an experience from this year that was up there in terms of that kind of thing, although it was very much in the battery storage frame, was the trip over to Wico and looking at recycling a little bit. They were still in the throes of actually building that facility, but that brought up a different angle of conversation, and it was certainly an experience going off to a different country to record about a specific brand that we'd never really had any interaction with. Thankfully, we had Dan with us to take the pressure away from the audio and video, because that would have been another level altogether again. But that was a really interesting experience, and these kind of opportunities only come about from sitting and doing chats like this in York in December when it's cold and dark outside, to end up in Italy in the sunshine in the summer was a bit of a change.
It was. I absolutely loved that trip, and there has been other sort of offers floated out there that we would bite their hand off to go and do. I think it's there's some really great opportunities there. I'd love to go to like somewhere like China or somewhere and see what happens in all this, because we just have boxes that arrive, like sat here in our unit, and we, I put them in the job bays and we go and fit them, but you forget that they've come from somewhere, and that has been turned from raw material into what we've got, and we're going to be the ones that finish the install, and then all that hard work is then put to use. So I'd love to go out there and have a look around some of the manufacturing plants and just see the scale of it, because I think the scale will be one of the most impressive things about it all. But yeah, some of those opportunities that you get are crazy, and very thankful for Wico and Solartricity for inviting us out there and showing us around that very impressive building that they're building, but also the way that it was a family-run company, which is close to probably both of our hearts, because we're both in kind of a family-run company, and they personally, as a family, invested in building something like that, because they see that trajectory of the battery market as having this almost like second life of some of these raw materials, that actually they are banking on people sending the batteries to them to recycle, and obviously getting money from that, but being almost like a bit of a central hub for some of this recycling. And it was a very, very impressive plan they had, and it would be great to go back and see them when all that is finished at some point. But no, it was a fantastic trip, and it was quite surreal that we had that opportunity to go out there.
It was surreal. It came from nowhere as well, and that's what tends to be the best things that happen, coming from left field totally, and that definitely did. I massively enjoyed meeting Marco and all of the team out there. They looked after us so well, and I said thank you to him lots over the months since, but thank you again, Marco, if you are watching. That was a really nice experience. In terms of the recorded episodes we've done, I think one of the more recent ones was one that I found the most interesting, and it's something that we maybe don't pay enough attention to. It might not even be out yet when this one goes out, but it's around the talking of stuff we're putting on roofs, and maybe how that isn't getting due care and attention, just from maybe a lack of awareness of the kit that's out there, I suppose. And that's a big benefit of doing this podcast, is that we get the privilege of speaking to these brands and people and learning about all this stuff that you weren't aware of.
Yeah, that's it. And you've stolen my one as well.
Is that one of yours?
That was one of mine, yeah, as well. I think that was a really eye-opening one, because until you have these conversations, you don't always know. Well, you don't know what you don't know. And I think when we sat down with them and they showed us what they had on offer, this was Hamar and Ingersoll Rand tools and Cloaker tools as well for the cutters and crimpers. I think you realise actually that there is a better way of doing it. And I think the really great installers out there don't just wake up one day and decide that they're now absolutely unbelievable installers. They continually improve. I know I've gone back to some of my jobs from when I first started. I think, oh God, I wouldn't have done that like that now. But I've learned from that point, and I say to the guys now and again, I say, look, if we want to class ourselves as one of the best installers out there, we need to just continually prove that. It's not a case of us just going on Instagram and putting, we are the best installers out there.
Damn it, I tried that.
Yeah, tried that. It's about trying to prove that and continually improve, so we can look back on an install that we've done, this year, and in a year, 2 years time, think, yeah, we've made a step forward, and that for me, speaking to the guys at Hamar who actually got us a discount as well. For anybody listening, I think it's Tool Talk 5, which is a discount for anyone that's listening, depending on when this goes out. But that's the discount on their tools. But it is knowing what's out there and how you can improve is how you can progress your full team and look back on where you were and go, yeah, we've improved, we've pushed things forward, and we're going to see what's next and where we can improve next. And this year has been a big one for me in my company about trying to improve our office processes and everything as we try to scale things up to that magic two jobs a week, which is incredibly hard. Some people out there will be listening thinking, we do that now. Fantastic. I'm telling you, for me, this is incredibly hard. And yeah, it's a real strain on trying to keep the quality really high, but push things forward to about 2 jobs per week. And that Happy Electrician thing has been really helpful for that.
Yeah, I was going to say the Happy Electrician podcast should feature in our look back through the year, but it's more than just the podcast we recorded with them, isn't it? We've been part of that since they first brought it forward, and it's certainly had an impact on our business. And you referenced earlier about kind of that saturated marketplace and all the competition that there is out there. And I think through doing the Happy Electrician, you kind of realise you have to display your value. We sort of know the differences ourselves, but our customers maybe don't. And they need our help, I suppose, in explaining that, the willing ones who will at least listen to that. And then there's natural ways you can show that as well, as you've said, through evidencing the quality of the work that you're delivering and your processes around it. So we try really hard to respond to inquiries really quickly, even if it's not getting proposals out super fast, but engaging that conversation and utilising AI as well to help with that. AI is useful in more places than just inverter software, by the way. It's building up all over the place. And yeah, we try to level ourselves up. And we're always looking at our installs, thinking, what can we do different? What would make it a better result for the customer? And some of the things are silly stuff, like a document folder that's a different colour. We swapped recently to a green one, and we've had loads of comments on that. And you just think, why only got that? Because there was no black ones in stock. But it's those kind of things sometimes that can set you apart in your content that you're creating, and daft things like that. They do sometimes need a bit of attention. So yeah, we are always looking. I think the good installers out there are in the work you deliver, in the training you're doing, the knowledge you gather in, the kit you fit in. It all plays a part in that. And that's how you best display your value. And the Happy Electrician opened my eyes in lots of ways to things around that. Did you see it change your approach structurally in how you're running your day-to-day life in your business? Not so much the business itself, but in what you're doing.
It definitely made me more conscious of what I can improve on. I think there's a hard difference between knowing what you should be doing and what you are doing, because what I find is that I'm still being dragged a little bit by what the company needs, rather than like what Mike Jones, who's part of the Happy Electrician thing, saying, about you running the company, not the company running you. And I do feel, hence I've been down here for, quite late on an evening trying to get things sorted, that I am still getting dragged into the company running me a little bit, rather than me being able to kind of zoom out and look at where things are wrong, are not going wrong, but where things could be better. And if that would help us convert more jobs, or the jobs get done quicker, but to the same quality, or, we save money on material, or all these different things that can really help the business. And I think what does eat away at me a little bit sometimes is the fact of knowing that, but not yet having implemented it, and knowing that there are these kind of leaks in the company's bucket, if you like, but I've just literally not managed to get to the point where I can seal that hole, or improve that process, or do this or do that. And I am a bit of an impatient person, to be honest. I like things to, if I think of something, I like to try and get on with it, because I feel like, one, I'm maybe going to forget about it, and two, as soon as I know there is a better way of doing something, it eats away at me if I don't do that straight away. And the reality is, as the company grows, you go from being able to kind of maneuver the company like a bit of a jet ski to actually trying to move a company that's a bit more like a much larger ship, that just takes a little bit more time, because you've got people that need to retrain, or you've got systems that you've already got that you need to tweak and alter, but you don't want to affect ongoing jobs and all this other sort of thing. So that really eats at me, but I really enjoy doing that part. And I think that's what the happy electrician thing has really helped me, is actually to gain a bit more enjoyment out of the business side of it. Because I think as electricians, as plumbing and heating engineers, as builders, as plasterers, as painters, we're in the job because we like doing the job. We're not usually in the job because we like running a business. You do obviously get sales companies that maybe sell solar PV that love the business side of it and then just subby all the work out, which there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, as long as the stuff's been done safely. It's been done safely. There's no mis-selling and everything. But for the majority of the companies out there, trade companies, it is a tradesman or woman that is doing the job because they really enjoy doing plumbing and heating, but then the business side is a bit of a burden. And I think what's been really good is the happy electrician side of things has shown that actually the business side can be exciting, can be motivating, and it's also really essential. And I think that's what. So I'm kind of caught between two places. I really enjoy. It's really helped me enjoy the business side more, but it's also frustrated me a little bit because I haven't been able to put 100% of my time into doing it because I'm so excited about that side of it now.
I think there'll be loads of people listening, thinking they're looking in the mirror, listening to you say that. I know
Yeah,
that
probably.
there's a lot of what you're saying there that resonates with myself as well, and it's really hard. And Mike has the 5 S's, doesn't he? And he'll probably tell me off for getting it wrong, but it's like the slog phase. I don't want to say it's the slog.
Startup, slog, systems, success, or something like that.
I think we missed one out somewhere,
yeah.
but that's like the slog phase, I think, isn't it? Where you need to get to that systemized approach, but getting out to that is so difficult. I think that's like the hardest bit when you're in business, to make it from there to there. And I'd say, looking at you from afar, like 80% of the time, I reckon you're there, which maybe isn't a bad percentage overall. It's just that 20% where you get sucked in. And I was listening to a podcast with James Sinclair, and he had the guy who founded Phones for You on there. He sold his business for like 1.6 billion or something. And at the time he sold it, he had no investment, no debt. All of that money was his. It's just like, wow. And he was saying all through his business, he tried to helicopter himself out, as everyone tells you to do, and look at all this stuff. But at least 20 or 30% of the time, he found himself as like the maverick who went fighting fires everywhere. So he'd dive into marketing when they were slowing down on the sales and focus on that for a bit. And other times he'd dive into operations and finance. And he would be like the boots on the ground doing it, even when he's got 12,000 people working for him. And it's like, you never need to lose that as the business owner, because it's like the life and blood of your business and brand is you at the end of the day. And he's like, lots of people think they have to be totally removed from all of that and directing other people to do it. And he's like, not the way I see it. You do need to get involved still, but limit that to 20 or 30% of your effective output in your business. And that was really interesting to me, because I think sometimes you can try and like remove yourself just to a world of systems and process, but then you lose what your brand is, I think, as well. And the Oval brand is very much Sam Featherstone, whether you like it or not. You like created it and gave birth to it, one of the better phrase.
Yeah, it feels like
you're stuck with each other now. It's like that's what's always going to be there. I think you're never going to get yourself fully out of that in December, where you're needing to pack up and load things together for your team while you're off on holiday. That's just what's always going to be there, I think. So I won't beat yourself up too much about it, although Mike might be telling you need to get systems a bit faster, so let's get on with it a little bit.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. I think there is always going to be that part as a business owner where you are going to be fighting fires. I think one of the hard things that a lot of us face is not always knowing where we should end up. in terms of like, does success look like you sat up in the office just deleting spam emails? Is that success? That everything else is working absolutely fine. Everybody's able to do everything absolutely fine. You're not getting bothered. Is that success? Or is success you running around the country trying to arrange scaffolding around a property in London, or in your unit till midnight packing jobs because you're going away for a week? And I think just through the course of this conversation that we're having now, Matt, I think it's probably somewhere in the middle. I think there's probably a way that I could have planned things better to not be down here at this time. But equally, I think I'll be bored, not going to swear, bored to death just deleting spam emails. And so there is probably that middle ground that I'm trying to find in my business. And this Happy Electrician thing has kind of prompted me to look at that. But yeah, I think most of us as tradespeople are in this kind of fight mode that we're trying to work out how to, generate more money from the business, but also how to find that point where you go, yeah, this is enough. I spoke about that in that podcast. This is enough. This is where I'm really happy. This is a really good point to be. And for me, I've felt like the 2 jobs per week for us is where I really love to get it to. I think if I went to any more, the leads would have to be like 10x. We'd have to have so many more leads. I'd have to have so much more on the design side, the office side, and I feel like it would just slip through my fingers a little bit too quickly. I think we can handle 2 jobs per week as we scale the team up, but I don't think I want to necessarily expand it any further than that, because I think the quality side of things for me is so important. And I just don't feel like I could just keep a grasp on that to go any further. But who knows, I might be sat here next year where I go, no, we're going for 5 jobs per week for whatever reason. So, but moving on from that side of things, what do you think's going to be? It's a really hard question, but what do you think's going to be out there next year? What we're going to be talking about this time next year when we're looking back over 2026? Do you think?
I think I've already referenced bits of it around sort of the AI stuff, but equally the bi-directional vehicle stuff. I think that is the one that's been ticking along in the background for 2 or 3 years now, and we're starting to see some real progress with that. Again, going back to SIG Energy, they just had another range of vehicles that are compatible with their system, which is really going to, I think, open the floodgates on their product, because that is then a way of maybe not having to buy into huge battery storage systems for your home if there's going to be a vehicle on the drive 80% of the time. So I think that's a really interesting area. In terms of our conversations and the podcast, I think we need to try and do a bit more of the real world stuff around some of these shows and maybe organise things a little bit better with that, improve on what we did last year, and just keep plugging away at these conversations, learning stuff we don't know.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'd love to get some groups together and have a chat with a group of installers, or a mixture of installers and manufacturers or something like that, and do more of an open podcast with more people, maybe a venue somewhere that seats more people, or even here, something like that would be really good. But for me, for 2026, I think we are moving into an era where feed-in tariff systems are getting older. They're getting more worn out. We're entering kind of the final 5 to 10 years of some of these systems, and people are now starting to worry a little bit more about the maintenance side of things, the fire side of things. And we've been involved recently with some conversations around the whole fire side of things. And I know you've had some conversations around, or you've produced some of your own content around DC isolators, which is probably a conversation for a full podcast. But I think we're going to be entering a world where companies and homeowners are going to be really looking for some comprehensive cover on some of their older systems, where they're wanting them to be checked because insurance companies might be driving them down that road, or they might just see some news stories about some systems that have failed and maybe damaged properties because they just haven't been checked since they were first installed.
That is such a good point. Maintenance is such a big one, and it's been neglected, not just in solar, but in electrical systems widely in unoccupied premises. And Yeah, that is definitely going to be the one. I think we'll see that, like you said, from the insurance side of it, but also the industry of things and the fire services we know are interested in that now, and they tend to get things done. So I think we'll definitely see that. I think if you're an installation company out there, look towards your maintenance packages, because I reckon, as you've just highlighted, the next year or two there'll be growing demand and lots of probably of remedial work that's needed. Maybe not so much just because it was installed badly, but it's not seen maintenance for a decade, maybe longer. And there's going to be stuff that needs doing. So yeah, that's a really good shout. I think as we've reached maybe the limit on our duration on this podcast, it ties in nicely with the topic we've got in mind for another one we're going to record straight after. Maybe if Sam's got time, don't need to jump out there and start loading bands up. Is there anything else you want to mention in this one?
No, I think we've given that a bit of a roundup of that. I've just, before we sound this out, just massive thank you to everybody that has been supporting us for, it'll be, 2 years in April or something like that. So, I can't believe that it's been this long, we've been sat across from each other and having these conversations. And like I said, when we went to install a show, it was just fantastic seeing people that were really engaged with what we were talking about. But, we know a small proportion of what's going on in the industry. We can only reflect on our experiences. We want people to come and tell us we're wrong about things and challenge things, views that we have, because we don't know everything about this sort of stuff. We're just two business owners, two Sparkies that are in this industry that really want to help improve it, but also want to be challenged and want to learn things. And like you said, Mark, we're in the privileged position of being able to sit across or next to people that know more about talking up, fixings, wind turbines, solar PV batteries, all these other sorts of things that we get the first opportunity to learn from. And hopefully this podcast allows others to then learn from that as well. And if it does, then for me, that's kind of job done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great way to end that conversation on, just to echo that thanks to you guys and girls watching along and giving us encouragement, topic ideas as well, and joining in with the comments. And as Sam said at the start of this episode, if you haven't already, don't forget to hit subscribe and check us out on other platforms. You can find us on all audio platforms and on YouTube if you're watching this. It's been an absolute pleasure to sit opposite Sam, chatting to him all year round again. I look forward to it again through 2026. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.